you said there. But one thing that I was laughing a little bit about was when you said that the eruption creates a frenzy that brings in more capital than the technology can support. And I was just like, that was definitely the ICO bubble, which, yeah, I
It was.
spent a
And
lot
the
of time.
2021 bubble. Both
Yeah,
bubbles.
Yeah.
well, yeah. Although that one, obviously there was a lot more stuff that actually worked.
But we'd say that frenzy stage started in 2017 and ended in 2021. And so actually going back to the early days of Placeholder, we had this chart that took and this is on our website, on our original thesis, that looked at it had an image of Carlotta's cycle adapted to crypto as we saw it in 2017. We marked it as the beginning of the frenzy. And, that tends to be a period of about similar duration. And so in some ways, it's kind of fascinating that this is a book from, this is almost a 40-year-old book, and it still has predictive power in determining or describing how technological revolutions.
Well, yeah, I've read that back in the day. I'm going to have to reread it because, yeah, I want to see how everything maps on. Yeah, people should definitely read it, by the way, if you haven't. I think we might even have a link to it on my website somewhere, the Unchained Crypto website, and we'll put it in the show notes for you. So one thing also that I wanted to ask about, because in my opinion, the year of 2022 was a very singular year for crypto. I've taken to calling it the year of crypto carnage. It's just historic for the sheer number of collapses like Terra Luna, Celsius, 3AC, FTX, and I'm not even naming all of them. There's more. So I was curious how you guys feel that the crypto industry has been building differently, if it's been building differently at all. And then generally, if you kind of feel that there are like certain lessons that either entrepreneurs or investors have absorbed, like what would those be?
Certainly. Well, I do think that humanity will continue to repeat certain mistakes again and again and again. And one of them is using too much leverage. So that's one side of it, of like, humans will make certain mistakes again. Now, if we build the infrastructure better, we can protect people from making those mistakes. So I think coming out from the carnage of 2022, one thing we've seen is return to focus on the non-custodial, truly decentralized mechanisms, because those are the ones that didn't fail us, right? And Luna was not decentralized, we would argue, and it was a failed mechanism. And I would say that anyone who studied it closely and held to, say, intellectual honesty without getting skewed by the returns could see that it was a failed mechanism. But so there's been a return to non-custodial, and like specifically within Solana, I think that's a great case study, because a lot of teams did use FTX, right, and got burned by FTX. And that has caused them to shift over to using squads and using a multi-sig and getting more crypto native with even just how they run their operations, because those mechanisms and those protocols can't fail them, right? And so learning that lesson was really important. And I remember Joel saying something like, this was in the midst of SVB's, collapse, and, the crypto specific stuff of like, what a great way for entrepreneurs to get, lessons on the importance of counterparty risk, right? And so that's important, and that will influence how people build in the years to come. So I would start there. The other thing I would say, and this relates to what Joel was saying about regulatory activity in the recomposition phase, we've been articulating this as a progression from defiant DeFi to the internet financial system. And that while we do think DeFi will continue to persist as a permissionless, potentially non-KYC AML system, and there will be that world, and it's unstoppable. And I think that there are arguments for why it has a right to persist as a form of speech, or code written as a form of speech. We also think that there's going to be a growing part of these systems specific to finance that is regulated, that is KYC AML'd, that does, say, work to meet the needs of some of the biggest capital allocators in the world. And that would be what we think of more as the internet financial system. And again, it benefits from the efficiency and speed of blockchain-based systems, things we've talked about for many years now in the crypto space. It also benefits from, the transparency and in some cases the autonomy of a non-custodial system. I think that we will see that you can be non-custodial and compliant, right? And there are ways to go about building things that way. But the non-custodial is really about limiting your counterparty risk, whereas the compliance is really on the application layer of who you are able to do business with and the types of capital that you can touch. So those would be two things that I would say that we would expect out of the 2022 carnage.
I think that no one is upset about law enforcement and regulators going after bad actors, but everyone's upset about them going after good actors. And unfortunately, we've had a situation where the lack of action or preemptive action with against bad actors has created, in the United States at least, it seems, a situation where there's an overreaction to the events and that is dragging down the good actors like Coinbase. But despite that, we think that companies like Coinbase and the good actors will prevail. But it's really important that the bad actors don't get away with it, and that the cycle of impunity stops, because up until 2022, we had largely a regime of impunity where there were some isolated cases where enforcement did go after bad actors, but they were kind of scarce. But going after those large-scale bad actors, and there's people that have been put in prison, there's people that have criminal cases against them, is really important as far as setting precedent and discouraging future bad actors from trying to do the same things or executing the same schemes. So that's really important. That's part of the reason why it's such a significant year. And so coupled with the changes in how entrepreneurs are building products that Chris alluded to, that create safer products overall, I think fewer people are going to be more sensitive to building resilient systems that don't fail, that have sound cryptoeconomic mechanisms. But it also means that perhaps some people will think twice before acting in a way that's improper, or acting in a way that goes against users
but
or
quick
against
question
the law.
for both of you, actually. Would you, because this was a debate, I think, on the chopping block, do you think that criminal cases against Do Kwon are fair? I know that Placeholder, did not believe in Terra Luna. You felt that it wasn't going to succeed. But, I know some people said, hey, being an entrepreneur and failing is not a crime. Other people said he, should be put away for that. So I was curious for your thoughts.
Yeah, I don't know. And I don't think my opinion matters on that, speaking for myself. And it's sort of up to the justice system to decide that, and judges to decide that. I do understand the sentiment. It's hard to judge, intentionality, which is really what a lot of cases are about. Did you intentionally act in a way that was harmful, or did you unintentionally do it? And something that we've talked about internally a lot is when you get these big events that are negative events, often we need scapegoats to kind of release a lot of the trauma and the industry trauma. And sometimes the scapegoats that are chosen by the market or by society are chosen unfairly. And that is something that happens. And so, there's good actors, there's bad actors, and there's people who make mistakes who, are neither good actors nor bad actors. I think that there's a lot of people who didn't like folks like Do Kwon because of their attitude and demeanor throughout the whole saga, and that doesn't help him. And so, things like that matter, and even how you behave and your personality and your character is hugely influential in establishing credibility. And so I think he put himself in a position where there's not that many allies, in part because of the character that he exhibited.
And I'll keep it very brief. The only thing I would say is how someone reacts to earnest critical feedback always reveals so much, at least to me, about their intent. And I think that if you look at, Vitalik and how he deals with earnest critical feedback, or, Toly from Solana, or Any legitimate ecosystem building for the very long term, they tend to incorporate and cogitate over feedback. And the people that I'm really skeptical of are the ones that punch down at that feedback and are reactive to it and inflammatory around it. And then I have to ask, well, what's the intention? Like, if the feedback is meant to make your system stronger, why are you being so reactive? It feels insecure, right? And are you actually protecting
Yep.
against a known insecurity for your own monetary gain? And if that's the case, then that's intentional, right? And I'll leave it to
Or
the courts to
yeah,
decide that. I have my own opinion, and I would just say the pattern of being reactive to earnest quality feedback is a major red flag.
Yeah.
either the intent or the delusion or level of delusion.